These men were having intimate relationships with animals. Yeah, you want me to repeat that? The men you seen in the thumbnail were having and admitted to having relationships with animals. That's right, intimate relationships. I know, this stuff is crazy. And that's what we're going to get into today on the Pen and the Shank. Man, let's just jump right into this because this stuff is super disturbing. And the reason that I even came across this in the first place is because somebody was recently arrested in Louisiana for like almost 100 counts of indecency or bestiality or whatever you want to call it with animals. So it made me go, and I didn't want to talk about that case because it's still going through the court, proceedings, and it's in its initial phase right now. But these cases that I just looked up involved not just individuals, but individuals who held esteemed jobs. Yeah, both of them were cops, and both of them are from Louisiana. I don't know what it is in Louisiana, why people want, I'm from Louisiana. I can't grasp the reason why people want to have relationships intimately with animals. And the first thing I thought of was, all right, he's got arrested. This particular person I'm going to talk about today got arrested. His name is, let's get into it. We're going to go to it. There's his picture right there. His name is Terry Yateman. That's right, Terry Yateman. And he is from Minden, Louisiana, right? And when I saw the article, the first thing I thought, okay, he was a police officer and he got arrested because the article I read, the first initial article I read about this dude, it said that the animals were unspecified. So I started thinking about the animals and I was like, okay, we in Louisiana, he's around Shreveport, Bossier area. What kind of animals they got out there? So the first thing I thought of was a raccoon. And I'm like, nah, I don't think no man can have an intimate relationship with a raccoon. Because you ever seen what raccoons do? So they tear him up, right? So then I thought, well, was he doing an alligator? And I said, man, that's pretty sick, right? Did he, because you could tie alligator's legs like this, right, behind him, and then tape his mouth shut, and you can do whatever you want to him. But I'm like, that's pretty sick. But then again, we're dealing with sick individuals. And so you try to start thinking this stuff in your head, but come to find out after he pleaded guilty and after all the information was provided to the public, we found out exactly what Terry Yateman was doing and whom he was doing it to. He was doing it to his own patrol dog. That's right, a Belgian Malinois. He was having relationships with his Belgian Malinois, and he recorded himself having his relation. And when he retired from the police force, they allowed this man to keep his Belgian Malinois because they had built up a relationship. Certainly nobody thought that they had built up the relationship in which, come to find out, they actually had built up. Man, I feel so bad for this dog. Can you imagine what this dog, I don't know what dogs think, but for a man to do this to a dog that he served in the line of duty with is pretty sick and disturbing. But let me get into this article that I read, because this man, Terry Yateman, this isn't accusations. He pleaded guilty. He admitted to it. He took a plea deal on this. And I'm going to read an article. There's a bunch of articles. You can go online, look them up. Terry Yateman. But the one I'm reading is from WFTV9. I want to give them credit, what credit due, by Crystal Bonvillain. And this is the article I'm going to read. And it's titled, Former Louisiana Cop Gets 20 Years in Prison for CP. S8 Retired K9. That's right. He S8 a retired K9. We just talked about that. All right. Here's what the story says. Bossier City, Louisiana. A former Louisiana police officer accused of possession CP, right? That's right. That's something else I'm going to talk about. You ever notice there's a pattern, right? When they get arrested for CP, right? Child P, right? There's usually something else that goes with it, right? So when you see a lot of these dudes who get arrested with this animal cruelty or bestiality or whatever you want to call it, it's titled different each state, right? Usually they went down this rabbit hole and they went from looking at children to it don't satisfy them no more. Now they're looking at animals. This is very disturbing, man. So anyway, here we go. Let me finish the article. And of filming himself repeatedly SA-ing his dog, that's right, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. So he got 20 years in prison, right? Terry Yateman, 41 of Minden, pleaded guilty in August on 5 counts of SA of animal and 1 count of CP. KTBS in Shreveport reported that each SA charge carries 4 years in prison to run consecutively for a total of 20 years. So what that means is that each one of the charges run consecutive back to back to back. So he has to do each charge individually. So they're not ran together. So they don't have one charge. So he's doing 20 years. That's his sentence. He's going to do every bit of that 20 years. And I don't think they're going to let him out on this. Ain't no parole board letting this man back into society until he does that full 20 years. So he's 41 when he took the conviction. So he's going to be 61 when he gets out. It's still disturbing. The CP charge carries another 20 years to run concurrently with the SA sentence. Yetman, who was a Bossier City police officer at the time of his arrest, is also required to register as a S offender. KTBS reported dozens of other charges against the former officer have been dropped as part of a plea agreement with prosecutors. The dude was initially arrested for 40 counts. He filmed himself with the K9, who the K9 served, valiantly in the line of duty. But he got stuck with this dude. Man, you can't make this stuff up. This is crazy, I know. Yetman was initially arrested in December 2018 and charged with 40 counts of SA abuse to his dog, which the news station identifies as a Belgian Malinois named Boss. Man, poor Boss, huh? Look, you know what would have been a good story if Boss would have fought back and bit him and tore him up, right? The dog, a retired canine police officer, was confiscated by authorities and placed in animal rescue in Texas. I hope Boss is living his best life. And if he's still not with us, I hope Boss was able to, live a good life for the last, whatever amount of years he had. But I do hope Boss is still alive. There's no information I can find on Boss, so I don't know what happened to Boss. Maybe some of y'all can go dig it up and look up this information and share in the comments on what happened to Boss. The child, let's get back to this article. The child P charges were tacked on in April 2019 after Yetman, who once worked as a K9 officer, was identified through a CP investigation targeting another former law enforcement officer. Look, they were going after a different officer. And while they were going after a different officer, that's when they uncovered this dude doing what this dude was doing. It's crazy how many, look, it doesn't matter the walk of life. It doesn't matter if it's low life or somebody who's living well in his esteemed member of society. You'd be surprised on how many people have these sick urges and going down these rabbit. That's why you really shouldn't be messing around on those sites, man, because they'll drive you down a rabbit hole, man. These dudes get desensitized to what they see and they start messing with canines for intimate relations. That's crazy. You don't want to be that person, man. Seek help while you still can. All right. Court documents obtained by KTBS indicate that the original target, at Yetman's request, provided Yetman with a 30 pair of underwear belonging to the target's 7-year-old daughter. Yetman then took the underwear to the homes of other alleged predators. Images of CP were also found in Yetman's Apple iCloud account, as were images of him abusing Boss. This is sad. I didn't even know until I just read it right here, because I read a few articles when I decided to read this article for this video. I didn't know he was doing that with his own child. This is very disturbing. This dude got 20 years. He should have got 50 years, but after 20 years, he might get out. I don't know, but I know ain't no parole board. No parole board member. If the parole board members find out about this, they better take heed. Don't release this man. Look, they got the animal rights organizations got 20,000 signatures to get this man the harshest sentence he can get. And the judge gave it to him. It was a harsh sentence. He got the full maximum on each count with the animals. But even more important than the animals is the innocent children, which we really don't know a lot about, right? Yetman joined the Bossier City Police Department in 2014. Before that, he had worked at another nearby law enforcement agency. Just 2 months before his arrest, Yetman was honored for his outstanding effort over the years to champion and protect rights of domestic violence victims and their families. He was the recipient of the 2018 Trey Hutchison Award, which is named for a Bossier City policeman who was killed in the line of duty in 2004 as he responded to a domestic violence call. Yetman was placed on administrative leave in 2018 and was later terminated, rightfully so. He has been in the Bossier City Detention Center ever since. Well, now we're in 2020. We know he pled guilty to these charges, and now we know he is serving a 20-year sentence in prison as of 2021. Here we are in 2025. So this dude is sick. Then we're gonna put a picture of him again. There he is right there. Look at him. Look, here's a picture of a Belgian Malinois. Look, he did that with that dog. That's crazy, right? This is some wild stuff, man, that's going on. And listen, when I initially went to look up for information on this crime, and I found out about this police officer. He ain't the only police officer who was involved. He ain't the only person. It ain't just cops, but it's disturbing to see how many people are doing this to animals. And a lot of articles I saw came from Louisiana. I remember being in prison in Louisiana, and they used to have people in there with charges called, I forgot what the name of the charges were. When I think of it, I'm missing my light bulb. I'll put it right there at the bottom. But they were charged with that, right? And I never quite knew what that was. Crime against nature. That's what it is. A crime against nature. I'm like, what is that? But that can mean a bunch of different things, right? This is definitely a crime against nature. Animals are part of nature, and they're having intimate relationships with animals, right? But I want to talk about another individual, and this is more recent. This is another cop, and this happened out of St. Tammany Parish, right? And this is another dude. This dude right here, just like Terry Yateman, he got arrested and he pleaded guilty to animal SA charges, right? But the same thing with this dude that Terry Yateman had, he also had the CP charges as well. See how it correlates? I think they start off looking at this stuff with CP and doing that, and it goes into animals, I would assume. I'm sure there's psychologists who study this stuff, but this is some sick behavior. So now we're going to talk about Christopher Cassidy. And this article is coming from WDSU News in New Orleans, right? And it's titled, Former St. Tammany Parish Deputy Pleads Guilty to Child and Animal S Charges, right? St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana. The St. Tammany Parish District Attorney announced the conviction of a former police officer in connection with a CP case. District Attorney Colin Sims announced Thursday that former St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office Corporal Christopher Cassidy, there's his picture, right, pleaded guilty to 78 counts of P-word involving children, 78 with children, and 111 counts of SA of animals. This dude, I don't know how he was working as a police officer. He must have been on the clock and was doing stuff to children and animals. This is some very sick and disturbing stuff. We should be aware of these people. Cassidy was sentenced to 15 years in prison for each count without the benefit of parole, according to Sims. Cassidy will have to register as a convicted S offender for the next 25 years. He should have to register in prison for the next till he ain't alive no more. That's where he needs to be. So innocent people and innocent animals can be protected. Ain't no squirrel safe, ain't no raccoon safe, ain't no possum safe. Alligators ain't even safe with these dudes, right? Much less children. So these dudes don't never need to get out of prison. According to Sims, Cassidy was arrested on February 24, 2022, after an investigation with the Louisiana Bureau of Investigation from the National Center for Missing Exploited Children. The tip provided information related to the uploading of CP in conjunction with a particular email address. Sims said the email belonged to Cassidy, who was working as a St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office at the time. The email address was used to send and receive numerous P-word images involving young, the same email address was used to send photos of a blank man identified as Cassidy standing in front of a full-length mirror. So the dude was taking pictures of himself. And this ain't for the animals, because the animals don't care about an image of himself. So he would send this image to, young, you got it. I know this stuff is crazy. We can't even say this stuff. They won't let us speak clearly on social media platforms, but we all know this has happened. How do we fight this if we can't even talk about it? The email address was used to send and receive numerous images. We said that already. The investigation revealed that he had over 100 images of people engaging in SA with animals. And this dude Cassidy and this dude Yateman are disturbed and sick, and they are obviously demonically possessed to do these type of things. I don't know how a man's depraved mind can go down this rabbit hole. It's very disturbing that these men are involved in this thing, and that these men were serving in the police force to actually have a job where society trusted them to defend the innocent. And in the process, they were preying on the most innocent and vulnerable victims of society. Young, adolescent, kids, and animals, right? It makes me think, who's the real animal? The animals that were victimized, or the animals who did these acts? The animals have more decency than these two individuals. And I hope for the sake of protecting society, that these men never get let out of prison, because somebody has to protect society. And if we let people like this walk the streets, we have a problem. There's no justification on defending these people. Listen, I do believe that all men can have a change of heart, no matter how bad the thing is. I do believe that. I believe that everybody can change. But just because you change, sometimes the consequences for your actions, even though you change, you still have to serve your punishment, right? And we, as a society, have a job, and that is to defend the innocent. And you can't let men like this walk the streets. They're just too dangerous. And if they change, they can live a changed life in prison. Look, they can find something to do that occupies their time that's positive in prison. They don't need to be free to do that, right? So let them do that. Let them change in prison. Let them find something to do in prison. I know one thing: they don't never need to be around children or dogs, ever. Bet they ain't gonna try that with a cat. You see what cats don't mess around. Cats get a bad rap, but I ain't ever heard of it with no felines. Always with canines. Anyway, thanks for watching the Pen and the Shank. I know this particular topic was really disturbing, and I feel like it's sometimes stuff that we have to talk about so we can be aware of what's going on in society. And the crazy part is, if you go look these men up or look up what I'm talking about, these particular crimes, you're going to be surprised on the rabbit hole that you can jump down into and how far it goes when it comes to people who are committing these crimes. Man, give me a like and subscribe to the Pen and the Shank. Let's get it.